What's up everyone? So today we're going to go over this 1500 watt fog machine just briefly, see if it works, see if it's worth the money, the price point and its features, and then we're going to make some fog juice where you don't have to spend a lot of money buying one of those big old gallons for $30 or $40 a gallon. You just make it as you need it. So let's get into this DIY project and see what it's all about. Some of the supplies you may want to purchase. First of all, you're going to need a fog machine, okay? They have different methods of fog. If you don't want to go this route, you could go with ultrasonic, which I don't have an example of that, or you could go with dry ice, okay? So ultrasonic is nice because it basically vibrates the water, and it could be any type of water. You just pour water in a bucket, put the ultrasonic vibrating panel in there, and it basically creates smoke, okay? They use it for fish ponds and stuff. The next type of option that you could do is dry ice, which you just drop some dry ice into a bucket of water and you're gonna have clouds of smoke. The only thing with that is you can't control how thick the smoke's gonna be, because dry ice is just gonna make a crap ton of thick smoke, okay? Then you have the heating system setup, which is your traditional fogger, what everyone generally uses. This unit happens to be 1500 watts. This is a generic one. A lot of people just rebrand it to whatever they need. It came with this tank that goes in here. I recommend getting the one with the tank where you can remove it. Some of them, this cover goes over the tank and holds it down. I don't recommend that because in order for you to get that out to clean it, you have to take off the top, okay? So even though they look the same, yeah, that could be different. They make a 1200 watt, and you know, they make just different sizes. They make the 15 and 1200 watt look the same. It's the same case. Only difference is the heater inside. This one's gonna run hotter and get your stuff up to temperature a lot faster, and your run time is gonna be greater, okay? So you're gonna definitely need distilled water. You're going to need some glycerin. This one's the vegetable one, okay? If you decide to get this one, it's pure versatile skincare. A second container, or just use the one with your fog machine. Some type of way to measure out your ratio between the glycerin and the distilled water. I use the water bottle because if you use a cup, it has a taper on it and you can't divvy things up correctly. So the water bottle, it's all symmetrical, and the cylindrical or the profile of the cylindrical piece is uniform all the way up for the most part, right? Then you're going to want your ducting. I recommend this being aluminum and not the plastic ones, just so it can retain that cold environment a lot better. And because if you have plastic and you freeze this water bottle and you stuff it in there, because that's what this is going to be for, the fog that gets chilled is the fog that, you know, just rolls off the water bottle. Now if you have the metal one, at least the cold also gets transferred. So when it's in the atmosphere in the tube, that cold water bottle will also transfer to that tube. And these generally have multiple layers. So this one's a 4-ply, so it's 4 layers thick. So it's going to keep that, or retain that cold environment a lot better in the tube. And it also will allow the fog to be cool from the outside of this tube, which internally, the outside of the diameter internally, and the outside of this water bottle as it flows through, okay? So I recommend something like that. And this accordion's closed and it extends out. This is 16 feet long, and look at how small of a package you got. If you get something like metal tubing or something of that sort, I don't recommend that because it's hard to store. This stuff, you just collapse it back down like an accordion and it's ready to go. Reason why I choose water bottles instead of doing a ice chest chiller and that stuff is because water bottles are cheap. You're not dedicated to drilling a hole in an ice chest and then deciding you don't like the output that you get. And you could have a whole bunch of these frozen 24 pack, and then you could put like 4 of them in there. Okay, take them out, put 4 more in there. I recommend putting these at the end of the tube rather than the beginning, because if you route this all the way through your maze or wherever you have it, like through your flower beds, you want it to be cold at the end of it, not at the beginning, because if this is cooling down your fog at the beginning where the port of your fog machine is, then it's going to start heating up as it makes its way down, because the atmospheric air will start warming it up. So the further down you could get your water bottle, the better, out the end or the outlet part of it, because that's where you want it to be the coolest. So when running your fog machine, of course this one has LED lights. I'm not going to utilize those. They have the version like this that's a 1200 watt. They have the 1500 watt, but also they have the LEDs different. This one has 8 LEDs vertically, and they change color. They have ones that are arrayed around this tube here, and I think those are 9 LEDs. I just got these because this one was the cheapest one that I could find that's 1500 watts. Okay, and like I said, they just rebrand these damn things. For your ducting, you don't want to, it comes with hose clamps. You don't want to clamp it to this, okay? If you're running a Gatorade bottle, this is a 4-inch tube. If you're running Gatorade bottles or soda bottles, go with the bigger tube. So that way you could stuff the water bottles down there. This was just cheap. I got this, I think, for $5 or $6 on Amazon for 16 feet. And it was a floor ply. But you don't want to clamp this on. So if this was bigger, it doesn't matter, because you're not clamping it to this, so you don't need no reducer. What you need to do is keep it away from the fog machine, maybe a fifth width, or about 4 inches or so, because this is going to shoot a stream of fog out of here. But from my research, my extensive research, what I found out was a lot of people that do this, which there's not many people that know about this or that actually care enough to do it. But when it shoots through the tube from here to here, this gap of air, for some reason, makes your fog like triple. It like makes it way more, it makes it seem like there's way more fog that's outputting from your ducting. For whatever reason, the air around here mixes with the air going in, so it might be cooling it and dissipating that heat before it goes in the tube, and that could be why you get a little bit more fog out of your fog machine, or it appears to be. So there's no reason to put it like this. Keep a distance, let it shoot into it. None of it's gonna leach out here just because it's like a straight stream that shoots out before it starts expanding. Another quick tip is if you do add water bottles in here, keep in mind they're gonna the condensation inside is going to create moisture, which is going to want to drip. Okay, so what I recommend you doing is maybe putting something underneath the back, or to support the side that's closest to the fog machine. Just lift it up so it's in line with the fog machine, so that way if any condensation builds up in here, it drips out the front. And then put a rag or something underneath it so no one slips and falls. If you prefer to go to your fog machine, just keep in mind you got electronics in here. You don't want to get them wet. But if you decide you want it to go this way, just lift up your tube on the outlet part of it, and then put a rag under here so it keeps it from creating a slip hazard in your haunted house or your sidewalk or what have you. If it's in a flower bed, it's not going to matter. Your fog machine is going to have the lid attached to it, okay? And this tube, you want to make sure this tube is down in your fog liquid, and you want to make sure that this filter here, this little brass filter, is nice and clean. Don't let any debris get in there because it'll clog up these little pores. You're going to have an issue. Okay, a snow machine has the same exact piece here, except it's on the exit part of your solution to create bubbles, and then the air blows across this, creating your flaky snow. If you ever looked at a snow machine that looks like this. Okay, so you want to get this down as deep down as possible. Okay, what I did was I just pushed all of it down in there, and the weight of it will keep it down at the bottom anyway. For the back of the unit, it gives you a warning. Okay, make sure you read through the manual and all that stuff. You have an input connector here. So let me see, I'll lift it up a little bit. Input connector here. You have an output connector here. You have your power in and your on and off. Then right here you have a grid of a grid pattern that allows you to gauge where your fog juice is. So if for whatever reason you fill it up to the top and you used one line and you ran it for about 10 minutes, you could kind of calculate how much you're going to use, how long it's going to take you to use the rest of your fog juice. So one of the components that you're given is your power button, so a remote control. You plug it in, you got your on and off power button. Okay, that's one piece. Then you're given a wireless remote setup. You plug in and you get a key fob. So if you're in a haunted house or something, or indoors, and this is outside, you could basically push and give you a time delay or what have you. Depending on your fog machine, these buttons will be different in the way they work. But basically it gives you a momentary on and off, so to speak, or it could be like a 30-minute interval, 30-second interval, where you push the button once and it'll disperse fog for 30 seconds. Okay, so different fog machines will have different options. So I can't speak on the remote so much, just because you're going to have a different fog machine more than likely. Also, you get a little antenna, old school. Get a power cable. So this is a pretty thick power cable. Just remember, if this isn't plugged directly into the wall, your extension cord needs to be equal to this or heavier duty than the wire that's given here. So depending on your wattage, search watts to amps and the recommended power cable that's needed for your device. Okay, this one's going to need a thicker power cable than, say, one that's 300 watts. Okay, so, and if you don't have a thick power cable supplying the power, your cable's going to get hot. Or if you don't have an outlet that could support the 1500 watts, you could pop a breaker. If for whatever reason you decide you want to mount this on, say, a haunted house or something, I don't recommend it unless it's like built heavy duty, or like maybe the eave of your home. You could put this bracket here. You get these little turn knobs, tighten it, and then on this piece here you could bolt it up to whatever it is you want to mount it to, and it allows you to pivot the fog machine, so you can pivot it up or down. Okay, so some of the items you're going to need to make your own fog juice is distilled water. Okay, this is pretty cheap. I think it's like $1 a gallon, something like that. You're going to need some glycerin. Okay, this one just happens to be a skincare one, versatile skincare. So you need some of that. You're going to need a container in which you're going to have your fog juice in, because you can't put it in this container, it's already full unless you pour some out. So this one comes with the fog machine, so that's the one I'm going to use. And then you're going to need some type of gauge in which you could do ratios. Okay, so how much water to glycerin mixture you're going to need will be dependent on how thick you want your fog. Okay, So the cost breakdown on this stuff, the distilled water is about $1, I believe, for a gallon. Water bottles are free because you probably are already recycling them. This extra container comes with your fog machine, or it should. If you don't have one, you could pick up a bucket from like Home Depot, the small, like I think they're 1 gallon or gallon and a half buckets, and use something like that with the tube going directly into it. And then your glycerin, this stuff could be costly, so keep an eye out on the cost for this. I believe for this 16 fluid ounce one, I think it was like $8, and I think it was like 10 or 20% off on Amazon. So to give you an understanding of the way I did this, I basically took a water bottle because I did not have a measuring cup. So I took a water bottle here and I divvied it up. I don't recommend using like a Starbucks cup or anything like that because it starts off small down here and it tapers to a larger section up here, so your percentage or ratio will be off. A water bottle's cheap. You probably already have one around that's empty, and you can write on it and stuff like that and then throw it away and recycle it or what have you. Okay, so it's real easily accessible to get something like this going. So what I did was I measured from the bottom to the top up here, not to the very top. You don't want to do that because you don't this tapers off up here. So from here to here is 6 inches exactly, and depending on your ratio will determine, you know, how much water to glycerin you're going to add. But what I did was I did mine in half increments. So from the bottom here, that's half, and then from the bottom here, that's 1 inch, 1.5, 2 inch, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6. Okay, so the long marks are a whole inch increment, and then the little dots in between are half-inch increments. So the ratio I'm going to use is a 25% ratio. So basically 25% glycerin and 75% water. And the reason for that is because that's a nice percentage to round anything into this 6-inch plastic bottle. So for instance, if I used one whole bottle, 6 inches, okay, filled this whole thing up, dumped it in there, then that means that I would need, out of the glycerin part, 1.5 inches of glycerin, okay? Because 25% of 6 inches is 1.5 inches, or 1.5 inches. So from this little bullet point here is 1.5 inches. So 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1.5 inches. So for every full bottle that I fill up, I'm gonna put that much of glycerin into that container. Okay, so if I decide to run 2 of these bottles, then that's going to be a 3-inch marker. So basically I would count these large ones because that's 1 inch. So 1, 2, 3. So I would have to fill this bottle halfway up with this glycerin to do 2 of these bottles. Now I was planning to do glow-in-the-dark fog just because it would look super cool to have your stuff glowing. One thing that glows is tonic water, but that can mess up your fog machine because it's not distilled. So keep that in mind. Anything other than distilled water could plug up your fog machine and kill it over time because it coats the heater, and the heaters need it in order to get the fog or the mist action to start. That being said, I recommend, instead of going about this by trying to make everything glow, don't even introduce highlighters into this. Some people do. I wouldn't recommend that. It will create a glowing effect because it is neon, so your water would glow when it's mixed into that, and then you'll have a little bit more action as far as it glowing as it blows out. But what I recommend, since your fog is already white, it's gonna glow under a black light anyway. It might not be as intense, but it will glow. So I recommend just doing this basic setup and getting a high powered black light, maybe beaming up from the bottom of the fog upward just to make it glow, or straight into the fog to get that glowing effect. But I don't recommend introducing any chemicals into this stuff, just because you're going to have people breathing this stuff in and it could be bad for their health if it's not non-toxic. So since I'm just testing my fog machine because I got a new one, what I ended up doing is only using, so I used this much of water, okay, and I used this much of glycerin to get my ratio. But what I did for my water bottle here is I only filled it up halfway with distilled water, and I multiplied that out. So I took 3 inches times 25%, and that gave me 3/4. So just under the 1 inch mark is where I filled it up with glycerin. And as you can see, it used quite a bit. Okay, as you can see, this is kind of liquidy. It's not real thick, which was pretty surprising. I thought it was going to be super thick. Anyhow, some of it did stay in this bottle, so I put a little drop of distilled water in there, shook it up, and poured it in. So this is just for testing purposes. As you can see, it gave me about to that line of solution. This thing here is probably 5 inches by maybe like 4 inches by 5 inches tall. Okay, just to kind of give you the idea of the volume that I'm dealing with. And then what you want to do is you want to stir it. So mix it all the way up just so it could kind of fuse all together, and then you're ready with your fog solution. So one thing I noticed right off the bat is a fire, or a potential fire hazard. And basically what's happening is when I plug this into a wall outlet, this was falling out, and the reason for that is because it was loose. Okay, so when these plugs in, it just wanted to slide right on out. The solution for that is expand these outward, kind of bend them out. You might need some needle nose or something to kind of bend them out, so that way you get a positive connection. If it's loose, it's going to heat up because you're not going to have a good connection, and that could potentially melt your cable and start a fire. Okay, if for whatever reason this cable's getting warm, you might want to buy another cable. These are pretty standard, and you could buy, you know, a better one, because this seems super flimsy inside. It could be, you know, a silicone jacket or whatnot, allowing it to be malleable, or, you know, where it's able to move around real easily. But to me, this might cause an issue just because, you know, it might not be a thick enough gauge wire internally. I don't know that for sure because there's nothing I see here. It says 300 to 500 volts, and then this is metric, so I don't trust anything from China. If it does start getting warm, I recommend buying one from the US or something like that and plugging it in. Keep an eye on this, just so you don't create any fires. Just in case something does go haywire, make sure you run a series of tests before using it and letting it go on its own. Okay, after 40 hours they say use distilled water and vinegar to clean it out, just so that way you don't get no buildup in there, and it could continue working the way it's supposed to. This instruction manual is pretty much useless. It tells you, or it shows you how to plug your stuff in. Okay, it shows that the wireless remote should be plugged into the bottom one. I don't know if that even matters. Okay, so this one needs to be plugged into the top and the wireless remote to the bottom. I don't know if it matters because it worked either way. And then this is what you're greeted with as far as instructions. It's pretty vague. It doesn't tell you to plug into the input or output, and that's about it. I mean, there's nothing to it as far as LED configurations and stuff like that. But you plug it in, wait for these red lights to light up. That means that your fog machine has been heated up. I recommend letting this thing heat up, warm up, and burn off the paint smell just because there's a smell, okay? Your fog machine, when it's running, that's going to be hot. So keep your hands away from that, okay? And you're going to get a puff of smoke coming out of that. Every now and then it's just going to release itself. But I will show you how this works. So you can push the button here and hold it down, and of course it's going to fog out. Okay, as you can see, that little puff of smoke, it kind of stinks just because it's probably burning off all the internal fumes of like maybe paint or whatever they used to coat the heater with. So that's that. And then you have your buttons here. So we'll push A first. So A went off. Then we'll push B. So B went off. And C. C went off. And then D. Okay. So not much different in the way it goes off. But now let's see if any of the lights work or how they work. Let's run through the different colors. So we'll push A, see if anything changes. So pushing A, nothing's happening. B, C, D. So nothing's going off. Let's see if we have power still. Yeah, we got power. And it did actuate it. So I don't know why the remote's not. Let's see. So there it goes. I don't know. Maybe it didn't have good signal. So A runs through different colors. B, same exact thing. C, same exact thing. D, same exact thing. So the colors aren't programmed to the buttons themselves. So what I'm going to do, I don't like that. I'm just going to cover this up. Or, I mean, it's going to be outside the haunted house, so it really doesn't matter, because what I'm going to do is this cannot be inside the house, just because you're not going to want this to heat up and potentially catch things on fire, especially costumes and stuff like that. That's hot. That's why there's a shield around it. Even this shield is kind of warm. That's why I also don't recommend clamping anything to this, because it can melt it. Yeah, this whole front end is warm now. But basically, this is going to be outside the haunted house. A tube is going to direct all that hot smoke into the house, and that way nothing catches on fire. So, I mean, you can put tape over this. Just make sure it's like, this doesn't get real hot. It's just in this area, the center area where the shield is, it's warm already. And I haven't even been pressing it that long. But that being said, if you decide to cover these up, make sure whatever you use to cover it up won't catch on fire. You could, you know, cover them with some black electrical tape, or maybe some duct tape. I don't know what temperatures those burn at, but that's that. I don't know if you can see that, but all that is from the fog machine. It's just going up in the air. That's about 25% mixture of glycerin and distilled water, and as you can see, it lifts up. So I recommend running a chiller to keep everything real low. But I mean, at nighttime it's going to look a lot denser, just because you're going to have the UV lights on or what have you, and then you're also going to have this in a dark area. You know, it's nighttime, so it's going to be super spooky as it flows through the air. But yeah, to keep it from blowing into oblivion, definitely chill the fog. That's going to complete today's video on this fog machine. I mean, for the price I paid for this, these usually sell for about 200 bucks. For something like this, that's a more professional machine, it's going to run you like $1,000. So for the price I got this at $75 on eBay, I mean, I think that's a great deal. Even if I have to replace the cable's not warm at all, so it's probably good. But if this thing could last, you know, a couple of years and get good use out of it, which I'm probably only going to be using this for Halloween time. So I mean, this should be able to last me for years to come, as long as the heating element doesn't burn out. But I mean, for a fraction, like a fourth of the cost of what a professional machine would do, that's this size, I mean, that's a good deal in my book. They also have, I think it's DJ is the brand. If I find it, I'll put it up. But those are about the $300 price range, equivalent to this, and those are supposed to be more reliable. But like I said, I got this deal on eBay and it works pretty good. I don't recommend holding this and shooting it, but as you can see, you could use it as a camera. And then also when you chill it with the chiller, so if you have a chiller unit connected to this, or if you run the tube and, you know, some water bottles at the end of it, that fog's gonna stay low and not go up in the air, okay? Because right now it looks like there's a damn fire going on. But that's it.